All right, thank you. All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to begin shortly. Please ensure your cell phones are off or on silent, and council members, just double check your microphones. Just a reminder, speak into the mic if you, when we talk, so certain people can hear on the live stream. All right, so today is October 2nd, 2023. It's Monday. This is Committee of the Whole meeting for Barberton City Council. Before we begin the Committee of the Whole meeting, we do have individual committee meetings this evening, and we will start with street, sidewalks, and lighting with Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is 6 p.m. I'd like to call to order the Street, Sidewalk, and Lighting Committee meeting. All my members are present, other council members as stated on my sheet, along with guests. We have two topics of discussion. The first one is a request legislation, a letter from Michael Tiadecki requesting legislation permitting the mayor to apply to Akron Metropolitan Area Transportation Study, AMETS, for congestion mitigation air quality congestion mitigation air quality program, CMAQ grant 2023 for infrastructure project funding. Emergency wording is requested. In August of this year, the city submitted a grant requesting funding for Norton Avenue and Worcester Road intersection. The grant is requesting $5,379,076 from AMETS to improve the flow and safety of this intersection by reconstruction. If we're awarded this grant, the intersection will be designed and alternatives for improvements include a roundabout at this location. Any questions from my committee in regards to this? To council? Anybody have any questions? Mr. Greer?
Well, thank you. Have we talked to the businesses in that area?
This is a grant, we're asking for a grant. If that grant is awarded to the city, then we will start with the neighborhood and everything. This is just primarily applying for a $5 million grant for that area. Anything from audience? Okay, Mrs. Eisman?
Well, I'm from that area, grew up there, and I think it would be really neat to see that there. I think we can all agree that's a very different intersection if you're not from here to figure out, what is happening. So I think it's a good idea.
I think it's an excellent idea, except I hate roundabouts. They scare me. I don't know. I get in, I can't get out, and I'm just driving around. But I think that area is so congested with the school and everything. I think that would be, a good place to put one in. I agree. Okay. Do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Bailey?
A second.
Mr. Shorter? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The second request was referred to the Streets Department from Utilities, and it's a letter from Todd Shreve, Service Director, requesting legislation to enter into contract with Simonson Construction Services, LLC, to replace water mains on Taylor Road for a total bid cost of $1,181,081 and a 65.9%, which is $797,000 award from OPWC. This was presented to the utilities and it was passed. Any questions from my committee in regards to this? No? From council? No questions?
Yay.
Yeah, yay. From the audience? No? Do I have a motion to call for this?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Mr. Griffin first, and Mrs. Bailey second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We have no pending legislation. And for discussion, I'm going to do the discussion. So, I'm going to try to make this as quick as I can because I know we have a lot of other things on the books. First thing I'd like to do is to thank Bob Moorhead for his article on Thursday, September 21st in the Gazette titled "Lack of Visible Road Work and Illusion." As chair of the Streets Department, I wanted to take it one step further than that. As you know, chair of the Streets Department, I'd like to explain the bidding process. So, this bid book here is the residential streets, including the basketball courts at Edgewood Park, at Tuscarora Park, the pickle courts. This is the bid book. Not too many, not too big, but there's enough there. So I just wanted to kind of show you, this is what, in-house, this is our bid book. The second bid book I want to show you is Taylor Road. Okay, this is Barberton Distribution System Improvement, Taylor Road Water Main Replacement. And I'm going to get to the right page. This is dated July 2023. This was dated March 2023. This is over $1 million with an OPWC grant that we did not get last year. It was reapplied again because you want to keep getting grants, and it's paying for $797,000 on this. Now this here this project consists of, let me find it here. I just want to explain the bid process. Because before the bid process, you have to go through the project description. And this breaks down everything. It breaks down, gosh, it's on my other piece of paper. Hang on one second, I'll find it. It's water lines, it's hydrants, it's sewers. No, I'm sorry, not sewers. It's the ADA ramps, and it's resurfacing the street. So this is a huge project, and it has been bid out, and it will get started here shortly. So this is the size of this one. This is Taylor Road. So it is getting done. Okay, the next thing I have is, this is not a bid book. The reason I'm bringing this up, because there was questions about Taylor Road and Worcester Road West. And this is the project description. 8.5 by 16, 263 pages. This is not the bid book. They haven't gone out to bid yet on that. But they're pretty close to it. It's supposed to be at the end of this ODOT's last quarter. So hopefully within, a month or so, we're going to go out to bid for this. This book is dated July 20th, 2022. That's the description. This is the project. And everybody has to sign off on their part of their project. Now, with Worcester Road West, you're looking at curbs, sidewalks, property land that you have to acquire, the utilities, the telephone, the cable, the electric, water, all of that. So it's been almost a year and a half just doing the project description. So I know everybody wants to get everything done as soon as they can, and listen, I'm sure all of us would like to have that done too, because how many questions do we get? You promised us we're going to get Worcester Road done, but it's not being done. It is being done. Anybody that wants to review these are available, and to understand why Worcester Road isn't, they're still working on that, what Mr. Moorhead said in the cassette. If you read his article, I have it here, if anybody wants to read it. He hits base on that, and It's the truth. That's what we're working on. So hopefully by maybe October or so, the bids will come through with this. Worcester Road West, once that bid comes through, then they'll start pieces and bits. I don't know what they do first. I don't know if they do the utilities first, or they move this, they move that. But it's a total reconstruction. It's not a resurfacing. It's a total reconstruction. Taylor Road, that's another one. They will resurface that once those lines go in. And it's something like 4,800 lineal feet of water line they're going to put in there. That doesn't happen overnight. Go ahead, correct me.
I would also note that Taylor Road has been talked about
Mhm.
for at least a good 4 years.
Mhm.
And it has taken that long to get to the point that we're at.
Because last year it would have happened, but we got turned down from the loan. So you reapply. That's what this is all about. You want to be able to get a loan that pays 80% Worcester Road West. The city's paying 80%. The rest is coming from ODOT.
We're paying
20%, I'm sorry, 20%, yes. And same with the other that we're looking at. If we get that grant for Worcester Road and Norton Avenue, the whole thing is that you want to go out and get grant because it's there. You just have to apply for that. So I just wanted to explain this. If anybody has any questions, anybody from my committee? No? Anybody from council? Anybody from the galley? Because if you don't know bids, you have no idea the time, the hours, the paperwork that goes into bids. It takes a long time. Mr. Tiadecki, go ahead.
So one thing I wanted to add with the Worcester Road West project is the plans have been completed already, so much so that the utilities have taken that plan, have already designed their portion of work.
Good.
And the gas has to move gas lines, First Energy has to move some poles, they have to move. So that utility work has already been bid out, and some of it's already begun in that road in anticipation of the ODOT contract. So even the utility work has already started with that project, which has to be clear before our contractor comes in and works with ODOT to continue the major portions of the roadway. So there's a lot of things you don't really see right now that have occurred with that project to already keep it moving forward.
There's a lot of variables that go into a project. And if you just take this and scale it down to a roof in your house, it's the same thing. It's just bigger, and it takes much longer because you have a lot of other departments. Plus, with the grant, with ODOT or with METS, you have the grant. So promises were made, and promises will be kept.
Councilwoman Angela? I'd also like to mention, we can dive into this a lot more. AMAX, for example, has several buckets of funds that they use, and they're very specific buckets. That money comes, so when you fill up your gas tank, there's a federal gas tax.
Right.
So the federal government collects that, and that's where that money comes from. And Worcester Road, 4th Street, Snyder, West Hopkinton, Norton Avenue, those were applied for through city council and through AMATs 5 or 6 years ago.
Right.
And it makes zero sense. You apply for them, you're awarded the money, but the money doesn't come out for 5 or 6 years. So the rules really make no sense, and it's very difficult to explain that to people. But that's the rules that you play by, because those are what are set up. You either use your funds for 100% of it, or you apply for this grant funds. And like you said, the money's out there. You have to apply for it. It's competitive, but I'd rather use someone else's money than our taxpayers'
Exactly.
money as much as possible.
And I think the residents agree with you 100% on that. If you can get grant money, that's how you get these big projects done. And I don't know the exact years, but the Robinson Avenue Bridge, did that take 15 years, 17 years? Something of that. Because the county kept on taking we were awarded, they'd give the money to Talmadge, they'd give the money someplace else until our bridge, it was an emergency that we had to get that done. So that was a good 15, 16, 17 years before we got that bridge. So things don't happen overnight. They take baby steps. So is there any questions from anybody? No? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Bailey, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Shorter, and we are adjourned at 6:15 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Angela. Next up, Environmental Health and Social Services, Mrs. Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to call the Environmental Health and Social Services Committee order. It was October 2nd. At 6:16 p.m. We are in council chambers with myself as chair, Mr. Jaber, and Mrs. Angeloff, and then all other council members are noted except Mrs. Colburn is absent, and all others noted on my sheet. At this time, we have no new topics of requested legislation or pending legislation. So I will open it up for miscellaneous discussion. Anything from the committee?
I have nothing.
No. Anything from the body? No. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will second that.
We are adjourned at 6:16 p.m.
Thank you, Mrs. Bailey. Planning, Annexation, and Codes with Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to call the Planning, Annexation, and Codes Committee to order. It is Monday, October 2nd, 6:17 p.m. here in council chambers. All members of the committee are present, which includes myself as chair, Mrs. Angeloff, Mr. Jaber, and President Greer. All other council members, with the exception of Mrs. Coburn, are also present, as well as guests noted on my agenda sheet. We have one new request for legislation, a letter from Benya Fulton, Assistant Planning Director, requesting legislation to allow the City of Barberton to enter into a contract with Butcher and Sons for the demolition of 401 Newell Street. Emergency wording and one reading is requested. This is for the 12,500 square foot commercial structure over by the middle school. Butcher and Sons' quote for $67,345 was the lowest of the 4 bids received. $52,600 of that will be covered by the city using CDBG funds. The remaining will be covered by the Barberton Community Foundation. Are there any questions regarding this legislation? Hearing none, can I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have no pending legislation, and I did not see either Fulton or Mr. Worsler present. I haven't received any updates from them since last week, so I don't have any other miscellaneous discussion. Is there any miscellaneous discussion from the committee? Other council members or the gallery? Hearing none, can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will second that.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 6:19.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson.
All right. Before we jump into Finance and Personnel Committee meeting, we have some comments that people can't hear. Individuals in the gallery when they're talking on the live stream, so just want to remind you, if it's longer or addressing a question that council has, please come up to the microphone. Next up, Finance and Personnel with Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and Personnel, it is Monday, October 2nd, 2023. It is 6:19 in council chambers. The committee consisting of Councilor Thompson, President Greer, and myself as chair, with Councilor Coburn being absent, and all noted in the column. We have a request for legislation, letter from Mayor Judge requesting legislation to apply to the Barberton Community Foundation for the grant in the amount of minimum $600,000 annually for 25 years to be used for rehabilitation of 480 West Tuscarawas Avenue. Before we talk about this, Mr. Mayor, would you have a presentation you'd like to share?
Just a very quick showing here, I'll put up here for everyone. Some work we've done on 480 West Tusk here. All right, so this is just a rendering of, all right, here's a rendering of what the front of it could look like, a little different than what it looks like now. So So this 480 West Tusk is approximately 46,000 square feet, a little bigger than this building here. So about 11 departments would be housed here. Parking spots, about 180. I've only included in this snapshot about 125 spaces at Lot 7, Block 7, there, the purple lot. And then 55 spaces on site there at 480 West Tusk. And this does not include the 2 brown lots that are south of Worcester Road West that are city-owned as well. Just an aerial view here. You see the drive-through here. The drive-through was taken out. The canopy is still there, but the drive-through access, the window's there, but the access has been taken out. But that can be reinstalled pretty quickly. And then just some floor plans. Again, this is just a draft, so this is the basement floor. You can see the writing there. So a lot of storage, which we have a huge need for storage. As you may know, we've got the YGAN building that we own across the alley here. The 3rd floor is taken up with a lot of storage, basically by the courts, but a lot of storage nonetheless. Okay, here's the main floor. One issue that we have here with this building is ADA compliance and access. So if you've been to this building, you know that there's a staff entrance, or what we've listed as a staff entrance here in the back to the right from the parking lot, and then the public entrance right at the intersection of 2nd and Tusk, and also a 3rd entrance off of the parking lot to the south there. So there's a community room. In this synopsis here, they've got the senior center, active adult center, parks department on the ground floor, finance and utility building. A lot of this can be changed and moved around, but this is just a draft, as I mentioned. Moving up to the next floor, some space there for different offices, new metal roof over the drive-through and reestablishing that, utility department. And then again, this is the way this building was constructed. You could go in there and get the whole thing and recreate it. So there's a lot of kind of leverage there and flexibility. So we kept it the way it is as the existing offices just for this presentation here. And then the 3rd floor, again, more offices, council chambers up on the 3rd floor. Personally, I don't necessarily like that. I think they should be on the ground floor for easy access. But conference rooms, different directors, work areas and offices on the 3rd floor here. So we have some of the things that would be taken care of here that we know need redone. New roof, the mechanicals, build onto the offices, and reestablishing the drive-through are some of the things that we're looking at. Like I said, we can reconfigure the inside any way we need to, but there is a lot of room to move around. This would include folding the parks and active adult center into it, and obviously the finance department too. So, but some of the issues that well, years ago we were looking at just building a whole new building, new justice center, new city building, and with inflation and with the specialty that goes into having a jail and the requirements by the state, you're looking at $20 million more than what we're looking at the estimates for this building and 480 West Tusk. So, we've been meeting for years on the Justice Center City building. We have bipartisan support. For years, we've been taking our state legislators as they've changed through this building, and our federal reps as well. We've applied several times to the state and the federal government for kind of the whole kit and caboodle, and also for pieces and parts, like cabling and internet. Haven't been able to get anywhere with any of our applications. Doesn't mean we're going to stop, but we're going to continue searching for funding. But I want to give you a quick overview of what we're looking at so far with 480 West Tusk. So the important thing is that the bones are still good. Any questions? Yes.
So this plan that you have here, I know it's a tentative plan. What would the average cost right now? I know there's no pinpoint cost, but what are we
Per
looking
square
at?
foot? You're probably looking $300 to $400 a square foot.
Okay.
And we try to track the construction cost of building materials, and it kind of over the last few years has gone all over the place. Typically, to build new, it was about $120 a square foot. Now, just to renovate, you're looking at $300 to $400.
How many square feet is the whole building?
Just over 46,000.
Okay. Okay.
And we've done a needs assessment, you know, what do employees, what do they want, what do they need? You know, everybody wants their own restroom, they want their own coffee station, you know, that's what they want. So what do we need, right? So, yes.
The windows, those are okay, because that has to be, if they have to be replaced, that would be,
Yeah, you know, the windows need replaced, and the metal parts in between them. I forget the name of them. Obviously, you can see where, if you look, there's additional windows added to this. So, you know, I don't think that that's a need, that's more of a want, but this is what they've kind of put together. But I think we can save some money by reducing some of the things that are in this plan.
so the windows are just a want, but the roof itself is a need.
Well, the windows
You
are
have
a
to
need
do
as
the-
well, but, you know, on this right-hand side, there's no windows on that side right now. So installing new windows, I don't think is something that we need. But the roof and the existing windows would have to be changed out, yeah. Yes.
What, so with the grant request, what would be an estimated payment a year to redo 480 West Tusk in the current building in the grand scheme?
So if it was everything as is now, right, snapshot of today, we estimate it to be about $1.6 million, the annual debt service. That's taking in all the renovation, the cost, the interest rate, all of that.
And how would we be putting money down? What would our plan be to put money down to begin the project?
So we still have some lost revenue funds, but moving on from an annual standpoint, you know, based on our allocation of space for each department, so we could use some enterprise funds for, based on an allocation of how much space is used for water, sewer, things like that.
So what would you estimate we'd be putting down as the city?
Down payment to bring so that's one of the things that we're talking to the foundation about. So we put several $1 million down from the city through lost revenue. And, you know, we're talking to the foundation about possibly them putting some money down as well. Because anytime you can drive that principal down before you issue the debt service, the better you are. So the grant request is for a minimum of $600,000, so it gives some wiggle room that if approved as is, the city could not negotiate less than $600,000. But we could continue working with the foundation as we have been and negotiate. You know, if it's 1.6 is the ceiling, then anywhere between $600,000 and 1.6.
If the payment estimate is 1.6 million and they're only willing to give us 600,000 in a grant, where do we make up the 1 million?
So that's where we would look at city funds, whether that's enterprise funds or what have you. The courts are also chipping in some money up front and on an annual basis. Don't know if you want to call that city funds.
Counselor?
And what happens if a sewer collapses? Are we gonna have enough cushion in that department's fund to cover something like that?
Well, the nice thing with enterprise funds is you always have money coming in, right? So we have emergency repairs that happen all the time. Just West Hopkinton just finished up. So you know, we're able to get through that. We feel that there's a certain amount that we can allocate for an annual payment and still be okay with any emergencies that come up.
Okay, I have one more question, sorry. And is there a reason why we're starting at 600 and going to try to work up and not the other way around? Like, why can't we request the full amount and the foundation say, we can't do that, can you work with XYZ?
If city council says, we'll apply for a grant of X number of dollars, then we have to apply for that amount of money. So if this goes 3 readings and the emergency wording is taken out, now it's middle or end of December before we're making application. So we go ahead and make application, they review it, now you're into 2024, January, maybe February, they say no, we go back to the drawing board. If there's some wiggle room to work through negotiations with them over the next 6 weeks while this goes 3 readings, then we can hopefully settle an exact amount.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor?
I'm a little bit confused here. We're asking a minimum of 600,000 for 25 years, or is that off the books? Is that off the table?
No, it'd be for 25
Okay,
years.
so, but your first year, are you looking at 1.6 million for the next 25 years from them? You are.
No, so the annual debt service, someone's gonna pay 1.6 million, right? So that would be our liability, so we get the foundation to pay a portion of that or all of that. So that's what the grant to the foundation would be.
So the first year, how soon are you planning, is this going to happen like in the spring of next year? Is that what you're hoping for?
No, we estimate that the first payment won't be due until 2025, some point in 2025.
Okay.
You know, if everything got settled today, there's a lot of legal work, there's a lot of bond issuance work, working with the Development Finance Authority and others, and then you got the build out, right? Then you would start paying for it, so 2025.
And with the money from the foundation, then we're looking at, it's an all-electric building, so you're going to switch that over to gas, I assume?
Yeah, in our plans, we've got the conversion and the installation of gas as well.
Has the water been turned off this building for the last, how long has it been vacant for the last?
I believe the last tenant left not too long ago. That was just a small office on the ground floor.
So the water has been on this entire time?
I'm not exactly sure if they've shut off the different floors or not.
That's a lot of money to ask the foundation, I don't know.
And we've been talking to them, you know, they've got their own rules and regulations and processes. And we've worked with their legal team and their accounting team and their board, executive team. And it's not an easy answer just to say yes or no, right? It's kind of working through some different things.
So you're looking at $1.6 million for 25 years. We need 1.6 million for 25 years? We do need that for 25 years?
I forgot my question.
No, go ahead. I'm
No,
just-
if you're,
Okay.
sorry.
We can come back when you.
Right, so we've talked about the new building. Can you talk a little bit about what the plans are for this one?
So police would stay here, the law department, and the courts, including the two judges and the clerk of courts. So there would be renovations made to this building as well to make it more functional, make it safer. So those, I only put the presentation together for 480 West Tusk because the foundation's money, you know, really, in other words, can't go for the courts and things like that, go more for city of Barberton operations.
Does that include being more ADA?
Yes.
Okay. That's all, thank you.
I mean, this is a very sound and solid and safe building because it's all concrete. It makes it very difficult to renovate. I mean, how much time do we spend on the roof? You know? Mayor Jeanette, you're sitting where the trash can once sat.
Yeah,
I think you're the first person that sat there since the trash can was sat.
you're brave.
Good.
It's no doubt we need this. I mean, it's very apparent, and I think you said that. With the, having a municipal building, bringing finance back, and the parks, you know, that would be, we would be all together. And that way, this building, you know, with the courts, that they could update that. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep coming back to this, but 1.6 million for 25 years. Is that, the 1.6, is that a minimum or a maximum? Is
For our
that
payment?
for, yeah,
We feel that that's,
payment?
I mean, things can change tomorrow with interest rates and all that.
Mhm.
We feel comfortable right now that 1.6 million is the annual payment.
Since you've talked to the foundation, what have they said about 1.6 million? That's a big ask.
That's a big
And-
ask.
It's a big
And
ask.
how much do they generally grant each year, would that wipe out any other grants?
Yeah, so they have kind of a few buckets. So they give out grants, and they have economic development, which they started the other year, and they have the scholarships, right? So we could talk for hours about their process and their 20 quarter average, and their spending limitations, and their rules and regulations, and what has changed over the last few years, right, and all that. I think 1.6 million is high for them, but that's where we're still working with them to see what is doable. Right?
Would we put anything in place as like a buffer in the event that they can't come through with 1.6 each year?
Yeah, we would have to create a buffer no matter whatever they approve. They'd have to approve it on an annual basis, right? So if they don't make that grant one year, we'd have to make that up. So we would have to create that buffer.
So you're saying that this would be a grant for year by year by year? It wouldn't be to ask them initially to do this for 25 years?
Well, they have to book it on their accounting side on an annual basis. They can't book it all today,
Right.
but the grant would be for 25 years. Now, they'd have to approve that. It's my understanding they'd have to approve that every year. But I want them to go into agreeing to something knowing it's going to be for 25 years, right? So,
Right. Now, the schools was what, 20 years? And there were a lot of
yeah, I mean, it's
things associated with the schools.
yeah. I mean, there's a levy on the ballot the voters approved, different than this. So that was 20 or 25 years.
And remind me, what was the payment for the high school debt service per year?
2.2 or 2.3 million? Somewhere.
Somewhere in there? And I've just recently, a few years ago, sorry to say, got a tour of the high school. I'd never set foot in it because I graduated from the old one, and our superintendent demanded I go in session. If you hadn't been in Barberton in your life and walked in there right now, if I told you it was built 3 years ago, you could probably believe it, as pristine and well-maintained as it is. That school could probably last longer than the old high school, which we all know was falling apart at the seams, but
There's no tunnel in the new high school.
no, that we know of.
So they say. Yeah.
But I do feel that this is going to be our one bite at this apple to get this done, to get what needs to happen with us moving there and the court staying here. I don't see any other time. As you said, Mayor, how many times have you applied for everything in the past, 10, 12 years? Only be told no at every turn?
Well, and, it's just not me. Mayor Jeanette, Mayor Hart, Mayor Bradnick, and everybody, they started looking at a new facility in 1958, 6 years after they built this. So it's been
That's
kind of
65 years later, here we are. I think if we do this and do this right, it could last another 65 years easily, just given what could happen with this. Is there any comments from the gallery? Are there any more questions for the mayor? Mr. President.
Thank you, Chair. Mayor, could we, if we can't afford a Lexus, we're going to have to buy a Honda. So, can we break this out in phases? Is this possible to break out in phases to be more realistic? Or just cut back on a lot of the ones?
So it's a lot easier to cut back on some of the ones. There's a lot of costs associated with the legal fees and the bond issuance fees. So if you're going to do multiple phases associated with bonds, it's going to be more costly in the end if you break it up. If you do it all at once, you have a better price rate. But we're already starting to look at what can we do or hold off, right? Another time. What is truly needed to move in and function and operate, making it safe and operational versus maybe something that can be put off.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr.
Just
Jeanette?
One comment, thanks for not needing the bucket today. But no, I do support that, and Mayor Judge is right. I mean, many administrations have to look at this. I guess my only question is maybe very early stages. Do you have a rough engineer's estimate of the total package, total cost?
It's, with interest, about 30 million.
The high school was more than that,
Yeah, I think basically.
35 or something, yeah.
And that rough estimate of 30, that covers both buildings?
Yes.
And just building a justice center at this point would be, what, about 28 million easily?
With the jail, I'd say closer to 50.
So we're gonna be able to cut it in half, give ourselves room, consolidate our offices, and give the courts and police the needed room they need. Mr. President?
I do have just one more question / comment. When we move the finance department, how much money are we going to save by moving the finance department? And how much money would we save annually by moving the parks department?
So finance department's about 9,000 out of the general fund, total about 20 to 25,000. But only 9 out of the
Annually?
general fund annually. Parks department, I don't have a good answer for you. So there's a contract that we have with the YMCA, and so we'll have to revisit that and look at what the exit cost looks like.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Counselor?
Okay, so have you or have you not talked to the Y about purchasing the senior center? You know, they're hearing it, if this is for the first time, you know, they might question that. I agree that I think if we're going to spend 1.6 million for 25 years, we should all be in the same area, and that's accessible for the senior center. But do they show an interest in taking over the Parks Department, or is there another interest? Because we own that part, don't we? We own that part. That we could sell it to, you know, to a business or something of that sort?
I'll have to revisit the contract, and I don't want to speak for the Y. I've had, over the years, informal conversations with them, but I don't want to speak anymore.
Because certainly we don't want to move the parks in this building and then that building sit empty.
Right.
You know, that's, you know, we want to be able to sell it to use the money for, you know, whatever we have. And I was just wondering if there was any talk, if there was any interest, if they ever said, the Y said if you move out, you'd be interested, or anybody else coming forward?
So I have a question. So 1.6 million times the 25 years was a $40 million project. The question was just asked what the total project cost was, and it's 30 million. So where's the $10 million gap?
So, you know, there's money that's going to be put up front to pay some of that principal down. So that'll come from the city and maybe from the foundation and the courts.
So it's really a $40 million, more than $40 million project, because 1.6 million, you just said, is the annual debt payment for 25 years. That would be 40 million. So if you put money down, it should be lower than that. Correct?
Always has a,
Yeah.
I don't have the full financials in front of me here.
When you look at the end of the day, after the 25 years, the total cost of this project is actually 48 million once you factor in the interest. After you put forth the money on the purchase of 480 West Tusk, you put forth the down payment of the building to get down to a $1.6 million debt service payment. Yeah, at the end of the day, after 25 years, the total cost of the project with interest is $48 million. It's about $30 million to rehab both buildings.
And we know the interest rate's going to change between now and whenever debt's issued.
Yes, sir.
The courts bought the Mason Hall. Where does that factor into all the renovations to this building?
So, you know, we had looked at that building to see if it's usable for any operations, either with the courts or the city, and it's just not. and that's one reason why it became available. Unfortunately, it's really in disrepair, so most likely we'll move to demo that building. Now, there's a process to go through to accomplish that, but we've had an analysis done on that building, and it's a beautiful building, great workmanship, but just hasn't been kept up like it should have been over the years. For example, just like this building, you enter the building, you go up or down steps. There's an elevator in it, but it's on the second floor. So you have to get to the second floor to use the elevator. So parking's an issue, things of that nature.
Are there any other comments from the body? Mr. President?
Mrs. Farr?
Oh, sorry.
I have a question. With the Masonic Temple, wasn't that purchased with court funds? Okay, so it wasn't city funds, it was the courts. All right, I just wanted to clear that up.
Chair.
Bye.
Thanks, Chair. What about the assets that we have already purchased for the old pit stop? If we move from, this is a little deeper question that I don't expect you to answer, but if we move from that area, pull parks out of there, would that affect the new parking arrangement that we just did not too long ago? Would we be able to sell off that land for development? Is that a possibility to kind of recoup some of the money that we've already spent for that area?
So yeah, I'm in the middle of putting a request for proposals together for that West Hopkinton area, where the old pit stop was, old wheel alignment. Very similar to what we issued for the 16th Street, the Worcester Road West property the other year. So I'm close to being done with that. We'll issue that to developers.
Okay.
So we also own the land, well, not joining it, but behind Ralph's.
Yeah, okay.
We own that as well.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Any more from the body? From the gallery? Yes, Chief.
Yeah, in reference to the water question, it would be on for the suppression system, even though it had low occupancy, the insurance would make sure that it was on. And
True.
if they would shut it off, we'd be notified about it.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any other questions or discussion for this? Mayor, thank you very much. Very appreciative.
If anyone has any questions over whatever happens tonight and over the next few weeks, please contact me. Let's set up a meeting and we'll continue talking about it.
Thank you. I think
I forgot.
Oh, by all means. Mr. Mayor.
You
Councilor
had
Angela.
mentioned about maybe having a tour of the First Merit building.
Yeah, haven't been able to put anything together yet.
Okay.
But yeah, once we put that together, everyone will be invited to tour the First Merit building.
Thank you.
I think everybody knows the dire need of the city and the courts, our police, everybody, for somewhat of a justice center that Judge McKinney's been graciously able to envision a reconfiguration here with us reconfiguring there. One thing that is kind of scary to me is if the foundation were to only grant $600,000 annually and leave us to try to piece together $1 million. That's kind of a scary number. You know, I know a couple years ago we looked at pay scale increase, and one of the discussions was where are we going to find $50,000 to $60,000 to $70,000. Well, now we've got to find $1 million. That's a scary thought to saddle for the mayor, for any mayors in the future, for anybody in the executive office running the city, even finance directors. It's a scary thought. You know, there was a sinkhole on Van Buren that opened up. We have to pay for that. You know, that sewer on Hopkinton that Councilor Thompson mentioned was $61,000. We can't foresee these things. And every time, you know, with Taylor Road coming up, you know, we only wonder what we'll find under there with infrastructure. And it's not just Barberton, obviously. Every city has aging infrastructure that you just don't know. We have water lines bursting. We have everything. I'm really hesitant with just $600,000, and I would entertain a motion from the committee to amend this to the $1.6 million to ask the foundation. I think that even the directors there that have been through this building and have been in this city their whole lives, they've seen the dire need. They've seen everything that could happen. All the mayors, past and present, they know that this has to happen, and they've all been turned down every which way we look. The state, the Fed, everybody keeps saying no to us. And like the mayor said, that doesn't stop us from being able to keep asking and applying and asking and applying. I get that. But I see this as our one shot that we could set up 65 to 70 years in the future. So before I entertain the motion, Councilor Angeloff?
Mr. Heiding, since you're chair of finance, have you made an appointment with the finance committee, with the foundation, to sit down and talk to them? It is a lot of money, and it is something, I think we should go forward and backwards and upside down with this. I would hate for them to get in a bind, you know. I mean, I know Jeremy said a couple weeks ago, we're not in a recession, but that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And just, have you?
I have not, and to your point there, the foundation being in a bind if there's a recession, in my view, is wholly different from a city government being in a bind. If we're in a bind, we have to do it. We have to operate. The foundation has to exist. We have to operate. There's a huge difference there. When that sewer broke, the foundation doesn't pay to fix that, we do. When equipment breaks at the fire station, we have to pay. If cruisers go out of service, we have to pay that. Us having to operate is the biggest hindrance. For the next 25 years, we have to operate. The foundation merely has to exist in perpetuity. A lot of the grants that they give now, and they do wonders, and they have been great stewards of this money. A lot of the nonprofits that do have some benefit from it were around before the foundation's creation. If they scale back what they're able to, what they give to other nonprofits and what they do, they could possibly piece this together better than we could. And the mayor has done extensive work trying to figure out where to find this money. Make no mistake about that. He has worked, I don't care, his ass off to try to get this done. But it's unfair to him, and it's unfair to any mayor that sits in that seat 23 years from now, trying to put a budget together, knowing that we have to somehow come up with $1 million if the foundation only approves $600,000.
But the question, it says a minimum of 600,000. 1.6 is period. 1.6, there's no minimum, is that the maximum? What is that piece of legislation going to say? Is it going to be a minimum of 1.6, a maximum of 1.6? Is there, because, you know, when I first read this, it said a minimum. So is that what you're asking, 1.6, is that's it, 1.6. We're not going for a minimum, that's the maximum, or that's what we want. And I don't have a problem with what you're saying, you know. I've been in this building a long time, and I can give tours if you'd like of this building, so whatever you're saying, I have to agree 100%, especially as many years we had to put up with that bag and the leakage and that type thing. And I've had maintenance men actually climb in the ceiling to do electrical work. But the first request came as a minimum of 600,000, and now that's off the board, so it's 1.6. That's what we want, 1.6 for 25 years. There's no minimum, there's no maximum. What kind of changed that?
Well, with the mayor saying and the finance director saying the estimated payment would be 1.6, once again, we have to operate. And if we ask for a minimum 6, and that's all they give us, and now we have to come up with $1 million every single year for the next 25 years, that's kind of a scary notion. You know,
But it doesn't say that. It just says you're saying to amend at 1.6 million for 25 years.
Correct.
So If we miscalculated or they miscalculated or whatever, and we have to come up with $1 million, then this has to be thought through, because if you're asking that for 25 years, then you're going to have to spend those pennies, and because there's not a minimum or maximum, 600 minimum, 1.6 maximum, kind of a play in between. I'm just looking at, the future, because we've seen things go up and down, up and down, up and down, and I just don't want to put them in a bind, but I feel that the best use for this money is to have a municipal building, because, since 1952, this building's been here, and they've done a tremendous job on keeping it running, keeping it open, but things have changed over the years. ADA has completely changed on things. So I don't want to say 1.6 million and then say, oh, we're $1 million short. It's like, okay, now we have to come up with $1 million.
I don't think it would be 2.6 million. I'm saying if the 600,000 is all that the foundation would grant, then we would be scrambling to find $1 million every year. And I just don't see that as a very viable option. Director or Mayor, what dollar amount would we be putting down just out of the city, out of that lost revenue fund? The director's right there.
In the one model that we have, about $6 million, which would be almost the rest of the lost revenue money. So that's what we'd be putting down.
When are we ever going to have the Fed or the state? We're not going to have a $6 million lost revenue transfer, possibly in our lifetimes. If we put the $6 million down out of our lost revenue fund, that cashes that out, as the director said. That means we can't use it for police cruisers. We can't use it for anything else.
Right.
We're sticking our necks out by putting up $6 million of lost revenue from the general fund. If we're sticking our necks out that bad, that means I believe that the mayor, the finance director, and anybody involved, law director, everyone, are dead serious that 1.6 million is the best estimate. And if we're going to put $6 million down out of our general fund, I don't think it's out of the question to ask the foundation to cover the rest. Counselor?
Okay, so when the foundation comes back and says, absolutely not, we are not giving you 1.6 million, are you gonna say, oh, okay, give me 1.5 million? Then we go back to them and they say, absolutely not. Is this gonna be a continual dance back and forth until we get to 600 or whatever that number may be? Is this just going to go back and forth?
I just have a hard time believing that if it was negotiated up or down, that the city can, I don't think the city can afford to make up the difference of whatever's granted, unless it's the whole shebang. Now, let's just say the 1.6 million one year because of inflation or interest goes to 1.7 million. It'd be a lot easier to find 100,000 than to find $1 million, or in this case, $1.1 million. Counselor?
I personally feel that it would be better to start at the bottom, like we are, with 600,000, because that's a big ask. And you were saying, where are we gonna find another million? Wonder if the foundation doesn't feel that they can find another million. They only have 86 million. We sit here acting like they have billions of dollars. It's $86 million. So I think it's too big of an ask to go to 1.6 million. I just do, and I wouldn't vote for that.
Counselor?
Thank you. I'm on the same page as Mr. Heidick. I think that we should start at the top, and if they say no, maybe in that moment, rather than us having to come back with another number, maybe they'll say we can't do 1.6, but we can do 1.2, whatever. I don't imagine that they would just leave it open-ended. I don't think it hurts to ask.
Counselor?
May I direct it to the mayor?
Oh, by all means.
Question. I don't mean to put you on the spot, But why was the letter a minimum of 600,000 for 25 years? Because that's what I was looking at. You know, I mean, I don't have anything that says 1.6 million, so can you explain that?
So we wanted to start somewhere. We wanted to have flexibility. I want to get something in front of council so we can make application, something approved by council so we can make application to the foundation and keep this moving forward. With a minimum of 600,000 and word it any way you want, I wanted that flexibility. So yes, it's somewhere between 600,000 and 1.6. So something's approved, let's say it's approved as is by council. Mr. Heidick has said that he would like this to go 3 readings. So that gives us 6 weeks, 7 weeks, because we have the 5th Monday this month. So we can continue negotiating with the foundation. And, you know, not saying that we would start at 600,000, not saying that we'd start at 1.6, but we would see what we can do somewhere in between there. So they have a kind of a big bite of the apple there. So I worded it that way so there's some flexibility as we continue to negotiate.
Thank you.
Because as Councilwoman Bailey said, didn't want to continue to do a dance.
Back and forth, yeah.
And we've been talking to them for quite a while. We put on presentations, you know, throughout the years to them. Chief Morber has a huge box of different plans and things from throughout the years. But wanted to get something in front of council so we can continue the negotiation and show them that we're on the same page, that we need to move forward with this, and let's get serious about the negotiations and really nail it down between some figures.
I saw a hand up out here. Maybe not. Counselor?
I just want to say I think I know that this is a huge project and it shouldn't be taken lightly. And if it takes a little time to get the ball rolling, that's okay. I mean, this is a huge commitment and I think it needs to be done right. I worry that if we only get 600,000 a year, that we're not going to be able to provide the services that we do currently, and I wouldn't support it at 600,000.
Chair.
Mr. President?
At 1.6, if you change the language to 1.6 mil, the concern with Mrs. Angeloff and Mrs. Bailey and everybody else is legit. If you change to 1.6, specific, the only answer you're going to get is binary. It's going to be yes or no. If it's no, then we'd have to come back to this whole process again. Correct me if I'm wrong, because the ordinance would already been passed. We'd have to go through council again. We'd have to redo everything. But I also agree with top-down logic, but we need that flexibility. The council, the city, everybody, we need that flexibility to be able to mitigate that no answer and have to come back to council. So being on the committee, and this is being a tight opinion here, how would you word that at 1.6 mil to be flexible still? What are we thinking for the, so a maximum of 1.6 instead of a minimum of 600?
I think that even if we amended it to say maximum, that still allows for a negotiate down to, let's say, 700,000, in which case
Okay.
we're still looking for 900,000.
So it's semantics at this point,
Right.
how we make the verbiage.
And mind you, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, I wouldn't want to not have a floor. Right? We're putting a ceiling on it. I wouldn't want to have a floor. So Mary Jeanette and I got together. We had a cool quorum back here. If you put minimum of 600,000 up to 1.6 million, maybe that's how you reward it.
But you want that floor is what?
Yeah, because I don't want, if you start at 1.6, maybe they go, oh, well, how about 200,000 a year? We want
Right.
to make sure there's some type of floor there.
That's what I said, a minimum and maximum.
Counselor?
But that's literally what it is. We're just saying there's a minimum. We wouldn't ask for more money than the payment is. So that's literally what we're this piece of legislation is asking for. We want them to pay 1.6 million. Of course that can be a part of the conversation. But could we please not have less than $600,000? I mean, that's what they're already saying.
So my question would be, in 6 years, if we only get 600,000 and there is a full-out recession, what happens if we now have to dig in our debt service? We have to pay it, what happens if we're struggling to come up with $1 million?
What do you want the minimum to be? What number? Do you want it to only be?
Honestly, I would
$1.6
like to see the
million?
foundation cover this endeavor. Director?
I'm just reading the letter.
My question would be, if you want it to be $600,000, and I've listened over year over year over year over budget, to everyone who doesn't want the 1 in front of the 6, what budget items are coming out of the budget to get $1 million?
Jeremy?
I believe he said water and sewer, correct?
That's not $1 million.
Director has an answer there?
I mean, in the discussions of that 1.6 million, as the mayor alluded to, some of that's going to be enterprise funds. We can dedicate 500,000 of enterprise funds. It's the most I'm willing to go from an audit perspective without the city getting in trouble. The other 500,000, where does that come from? We can probably get about 250, 200 from the courts. Rest is going to be general fund. So, I mean, yeah, I brought up the question throughout discussions. Look back to 2019. Where were we cutting in the budget to come up with a $200,000 debt service payment? Debt service payment will take priority over wages, over operations and maintenance, over capital. Debt service will always come first. So, I mean, that's a concern that I have brought to the table since day one on when the numbers were starting to be tossed around. So, it's my concern. It's just the information I'm going to provide to you guys for you guys to make a decision. Yes.
Do you think this is a good move to build this building, or do you want to skip it? If you were being straight out honest.
I wouldn't say skip it. I mean, I think it is very important. There's a need from a safety standpoint, from the justice standpoint, the judges, the police department, law department. There's a need for safety. I mean, should the judges be in the same elevator shaft as the people that they're trying? Probably not. So there is a safety standpoint there. Should there be an enclosed area for the police when they do arrest someone to bring them in? Absolutely, there should be. That way those criminals can't take off down the alley. Or if there's a citizen just standing out there and that criminal goes after that citizen. So from a safety standpoint, absolutely. Does it make sense for all city services to be under one roof? Absolutely. So yeah, I'm definitely for this. My concern is just from how much can the city afford of this? I mean, as Mr. Heidick alluded to, the city is putting forth $7 million of lost revenue money. $6 million of lost revenue money. Well, almost 7 because we're going to use lost revenue money to purchase the building. So we're putting almost all our lost revenue money towards this building. We won't have a safety net anymore of the what if. So, I mean, like I said, we're going to be coming up with about $200,000 to $300,000 out of the general fund each year for this building. I always point it back to 2019. Where in the 2019 budget cycle were we going to cut $200,000, $300,000 to get that budget to pass? We were one step away from layoffs. So, like I said, just providing you guys with the information, the concerns that I have. I think it is a good idea. I think it is needed for the city. I think it's good for the citizens of the city. So I'm not against it. I'm just expressing the concerns of how does the city afford it.
Last question for you. If you would write this resolution, what would you want it to be? Max minimum, or what number would you want it? Since you're a finance guy.
I mean, I guess it depends on how you want to look at it. So 600,000, like I said, 200,000 to 300,000 is coming out of the general fund. Where in 2019 were we going to cut services to be able to afford this?
So let's make it minimum 900,000?
to me, I would like to see
Get
the
what you
general
can.
fund not have to put out any money each year to be able to keep providing the safety services for the city. Or park services, because parks gets paid out of, administration gets paid out of general fund. So, I mean, all those services are essential for the operations of the city. I mean, building department is kind of essential. So all those services get paid out of general fund. So we're, like I said, the budget cycle's cyclical. We'll always go through time periods of good times. Right now, we're in a good time. 2019, 2018, we weren't in a good time. Last time we probably had bad times was probably about 2008, 2009. So is it about every 10 years those cycles come around? Could be. So, I mean, I like to see no money come out of the general fund, just so we can continue, as you guys alluded to keep providing the services for the city. So that's just my opinion.
So what do you want the minimum? We're asking right now, what do you want the minimum to be?
He doesn't want any, or the,
Don't put him on the spot.
I just said.
I know, but.
I want no money out of the general fund.
1.6.
So no money out of the general fund would be about $800,000 and $900,000.
Let's put 900,000, we'll go from there.
So, I mean, that would be no money out of the general fund at that.
Two things you always listen to is your lawyer and your accountant and finance director, so we'll go with your lead and say 900,000 instead of going 600,000.
let me ask this, when you said 500,000 out of enterprise funds, what do we use that 500,000 for currently?
I would have to check with the utilities director. I mean, it's just another debt service payment in there. I mean, as the mayor alluded to, those funds always have money coming into them. It's the water bill payment. You get your utility bill in the mail. It's your water, your sewer, your storm, your garbage. So, I mean, we'd probably have to look down the road because, I mean, inflation is a real thing. Cost of living adjustments and union contracts are a real thing. So, I mean, you'd probably have to look at raising water rates. I mean, I know they can go 5% without council approval currently. So, I mean, there could be times where maybe we might not need, without this debt service, we may not need a raise. But with this debt service, we may need to do a rate increase just so we can get those to meet minimum fund balance policies. So yeah, I mean, there's a little bit more leeway in the enterprise funds because, I mean, we do have the power to control how much money comes into those funds a little bit better than we do the general fund. So.
That seems like it would be passing it off to the citizens for any rate increases to try to make this. That doesn't sound right to me. That's just me personally. Counselor?
I just want to say that I am all for a justice center. We need one badly. All of the things that Jeremy brought up about the prisoners out in the parking lot, I encountered that before. And the prisoners on the elevators with judges and you know, residents from the city. I'm all for it. However, right now we're arguing about how much to ask for. And it's not that anybody in this room doesn't want this to happen. However, we are relying on another entity to say yes or no. So right now, you know, everybody wants it, but we need to see what the foundation actually says. How much can they go? What are their rules regarding how much they can grant? We have to depend on what they have to say before we can go further.
And I would ask this of Mayor Judge and former Mayor Jeanette. Could you just ballpark how many applications for a justice center or anything in your tenures, how many times you've been said no? How many things have been denied? How many things have you, if you could just put a rough estimate?
I can answer, when I was mayor, there was never an application put forward because we really didn't have have a solid plan to be able to, I don't know, you know, we're looking at renovating, we're looking at building, so there was never an application taken.
We didn't have any money then.
I'd say about 4. One at the federal level for cabling internet, and I'd say probably 3 at the state level for their capital fund.
Director, did you have something to say there?
We've never submitted any grant application ordinance to the foundation for Justice Center. For an application to the Justice Center for funding,
About the Community Foundation, we never did. And I don't think ours did.
I don't recall drafting that.
We talked about it.
I would remind everyone in this council, your fiduciary obligations to the city, not to the foundation. So we don't have any obligation to them and their assets. So we're allowed to request whatever we want. Their obligation, their board is responsible for their assets.
Exactly.
Right. So we can ask for whatever we want. They can decide to do whatever they want.
But if you ask for too much, you probably.
Then they can say no, correct?
Right.
Right.
But if we ask for
That's
too
still
little,
conversations
then we
We
have,
want to work
We have to
together.
have. well,
They have the money, we need their money. We
We
need
have
to
to
work
operate.
together.
Well,
It's not
We
even.
have
haven't had
operations.
any- when-
I'm sorry,
The
Director.
conversation occurs in public, right? We pass an ordinance, right? That's our request.
Correct?
And then we present it to them, and then they have a conversation.
Correct?
We haven't made a request yet.
And that's why we're discussing every single
Right,
nuance here.
right.
Counselor?
I just don't foresee them receiving a request, even though it says a minimum of 600,000, for their board to be like, you know what? Let me give you 1.6. I just don't see it happening. I think we just
They
need
need
to
to.
ask for it all.
I mean, I think personally, myself, foundations, they're slacking with the city. I mean, they should be helping out way much more with the city, especially with the safety forces, the cruisers, the equipment. I mean, they need to step up more. At the end of the day, I mean, they have the money. They got, you said $80 million. $80 million is a lot. They can invest that, reinvest.
Chip into it.
You can chip in it, but they can invest it, and they're investing. They're buying properties, selling properties. We can't do it. They're making money. They're not home sleeping and saying, how am I going to eat dinner tonight? They got money to spend. And it's time for the city and the citizens to step up and go to their office and say, listen, start spending some money. So let's follow Jeremy's lead. Let's ask for $900,000. Then hopefully we can follow through and get more money out of them. I mean, they got the money. Our safety forces should have all new cruisers by now, all new equipment. Should have had this done a long time ago. They're slacking. And I know the foundation's probably watching right now, and Ted and whoever the rest of people, the names, you guys are doing a terrible job at helping out the citizens in the city. Like, you should be doing more.
They have rules and regulations
But
too,
they
though,
can,
about what they can
they are
spend
making
their
money.
money
They are
on.
not losing money, trust me. They're buying properties, they're making money, they're investing, they have money. $80 million can be used. Next year they have $40 million, but guess what? They still have that money. They're not gonna file bankruptcy in 2026, 2027. They have money. It's time for them to step up and start giving back to the citizens of Barberton. That's just my opinion, my input, but I think you should make it $900,000. If they say no, then we start from back, scratch one, I guess,
Counselor?
And this is my opinion only, and I don't care if anybody agrees with me or not, and I'm beyond that stage. We have a foundation. We all ought to be grateful that we have a foundation. A lot of cities don't have a foundation. And there's no reason why we can't have an open dialogue with them, I'm questioning the letter that received. That's the only thing I'm questioning. It said minimum 600,000, 1.6. Where's that letter? Did I not get that letter? So if you're looking, it said minimum, the maximum 25 years, 30 years, whatever it comes down to. Number one is that we need this municipal building. We need this. It's smart move that the jail and the courts and everything stay here because everything is here and we don't want to mess with the jail. The other thing is, First Merit has been sitting empty for 20 years or something. What is the repairs in that? Just turning from electric to gas, there's a lot of concept. From day one, when that went up for sale, it's the first thing that I thought we should move there because of this building. But I do not, as sitting on council, want to rub the foundation the wrong way. That's the backbone of the city. You have to realize that. There's communities that wish they had a foundation. And regardless of the amount of money that we have, let's work together with this town. This town went from 36,000 to 27,000 people and whatnot. Let's work together and see where they can come. What would be good for both of them? Don't put them in a bind, don't put us in a bind. You start using enterprise money, and I don't mind using enterprise money, but that's kind of like in the bank account by itself to use for emergencies, a 24-inch water main that closes the city down for 2 days, no water, that you have to bring somebody in. You could always have to think about that. So I'm not crazy about using $500,000 of enterprise money. That's there for EPA, for the water, for the sewer. That money is there for a reason. So I just feel, I feel you as chair of finance needs to get these questions answered with the mayor and that and bring it back to council. Because right now, everybody's got a different thing and it's all going to be on social media. This person said this person says that. You're chair of finance. Get some answers,
Let me ask you something. What happens if we say minimum 600,000 and they just say no altogether?
Well,
Then where do we go from there? I'm asking you that question.
Okay,
As
then-
chair of finance, where do we go? Where do
Then
we
you
cut even
negotiate
more
up.
money?
We're going to ask, we're
To negotiate
asking
up,
you
if they
what we
flat
can
out say
do.
no to 600,000,
Well,
what do we do?
what if you say 1.6 and they say no? Then you're gonna
Then
say,
they've
how
said
about
no both
1.2?
ways.
How about 1.3? It's the same, you're going up and you're going down, the same thing. 600,000, I didn't have any numbers. I didn't know what that meant. It just said minimum $600, 600,000, that's all I knew.
Right.
Okay, then start at $1 million. Go and talk to them and see. The school is supposed to cost, and don't quote me because I'm not exactly sure, $23 million. It ended up being 30-some thousand, million, 30-some $1 million. So that was an adjustment. That was what, $9 million more than what they originally said. Because you don't know what's going to happen, so you need that extra. And they paid that debt down, 25 years or 30 years. But I'm just saying that the foundation, we're blessed by having a foundation. And we need to include them with the city, sit down and go for $1 million. And if they say no, is it going to be less or is it going to be more if they say no? Kind of negotiate like anything that you would. But understand both sides, our needs and their needs.
I'm sorry if I sound like an absolute jerk. Their needs are immaterial. They only have to exist. We have to operate. We have many things wrong. Where's the ceiling tiles and all that? Mr. T. Deck, why isn't this roof fixed? We have to fix that. The foundation doesn't have to fix that. We have over former Mayor Jeanette sitting where a bucket used to be. We had to pay for that. We can't, if we go tapping into enterprise funds, as Director Flaker said, and all of a sudden residents have 5% increases every year on their water bills because we need to service our debt service payment, that is not something that I'm willing to put our citizens to do. And the only reason I say 1.6 million is that's what the mayor, what the finance director have estimated the payment to be. We sometimes are on the brink as this city. When B&W left, that was a hard 3 years. And I know nobody wants to say it, but thank everything for COVID that we were able to actually save money. That's a horrible thing to say, I know. But it did save the city money, am I right? So what happens now?
Gave us cash for the
Right.
streets.
So now what happens? They say we'll give you 600,000. We plug in, we cut $230,000 from the general fund after we've already tapped into $500,000 from enterprise funds and then raised water rates and sewer rates on our residents. The whole purpose of this is the high school was built by them. The city needs. This is no longer a want. That draft the mayor had up there, that's a beautiful picture, a beautiful rendering. As he said, that building can be done a million different ways. We could want the world. We need. The high school needed. We are past bedtime. We're never going to have $6 million just sitting around in our general fund that we can use. Ever. Unless somebody brings a business in that's paying people $1 million an hour for their income tax, we're not going to have $6 million. If we are willing to put our last $6 million into this, then I don't think it's out of line to ask the foundation for $1.6 million a year so that our residents don't have to pick up the tab or our firefighters don't have to look at layoffs again. Anything. Our cruisers being in disrepair. Something happened. Taylor Road, we're doing that and all of a sudden we go start fixing the water lines and down Wilson Way blows because of the pressure. These are old pipes. We need what we have and we always will. And I understand that the foundation, yes, we want to be partners with them. This is an endeavor we can't afford on our own. We just can't. We can't afford it on our own. We couldn't. If we could afford it on our own, it would have been done by now. We can't even afford it partially. You saw the look and the tone of our finance director's face and his voice. He's worried sick that if something happens, like he said, you have your streets books there. We had our budget books. Somebody take a line and scratch out $230,000. And if it's some officer or firefighter, I'm not saying the person's name that the line's going to go through. I'd rather put lines under names instead of through them. Counselor?
You're just not getting the gist of it. I have a letter, and it's on your committee, a minimum of 600,000. Did it just like
I haven't motioned to amend it yet.
We've never discussed it. I mean, I've never talked to anybody about it. Last week, I think you said that you were going to bring it up. So that's my question. I'm questioning, okay, it was 600,000, now it's $1.6 million. I'm not questioning 1.6 million. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes. I'm questioning is that it seems as though certain people know about 1.6 million, and I didn't know anything about it. I never talked to the mayor about 1.6 million. I'm looking at the information that we received and it said a minimum of 600,000.
During the mayor's presentation, he said 1.6 million. Did you not, during your presentation?
Yeah,
Thank you.
he did tonight, but that's not what I have. It says minimum 600,000. And I'm thinking, okay, well, then who was talking to who and how did that 600 minimum come up to 1.6? If it takes 1.6, then we'll have to take a look at that. My question is that you wanted to change it on the floor, but I don't have anything in writing that says that. I have a letter that says minimum.
Director Miller, am I allowed to motion to amend it to 1.6 million?
You can amend it to $6 million. You can amend it to anything that you
Okay.
want. I'm just saying, how much conversation have we had about 1.6 except just right now with that?
About an hour's worth.
A little over an hour.
Okay, then an hour's an hour, huh? I guess we can't go any
Counselor?
further. That takes up enough time.
Mr. Heide, I think what she's talking about, the 600,000 is in the paperwork. We never knew anything about the 1.6. 600,000 minimum. That's what it was. When I come in here, that's what it was, 600,000. So the 1.6 is, it's all Greek to me. So why wasn't it homework done before on that and 1.6 put in paperwork when I received it? That's
Or
what
why
we're
didn't you
talking about.
call all of council and say that
Yeah.
minimum
That's
has changed where we've been looking at 1.6 or something? It's like,
The mayor requested a
seriously?
minimum 600. He gave a presentation. In the presentation, it was asked what the payments would be. The payment was estimated at 1.6 million. I would like to amend it to 1.6 million, and that would be a motion through the committee. Had the mayor not presented tonight, we would have this discussion, and I'm honestly thinking the same thing would happen, that I would want to amend it, or motion to amend, to ask for everything. But when the mayor and the finance director stand right here and right there and say, yeah, we're requesting 600, minimum 600,000, but the payment's really 1.6 million. Well, then I'm gonna amend it to 1.6 million, and I believe that
If
I
we knew
can.
about it ahead of time. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't know. I'm looking, I got it highlighted, minimum 600,000. Maybe your committee knew about it, but how many of the non-committee that didn't know about it? I didn't talk to the mayor. I didn't.
How many of you saw the draft pictures and all that before tonight? Did anybody?
What pictures?
When the mayor did his presentation with the renderings and whatnot, how many have saw them before tonight?
I'm just saying, when I get a letter and I want the amount or something changed, I call my committee people and tell them I'd like to change this on the floor for so-and-so and the reason for. I just don't, whatever.
Counselor?
So was tonight, during your committee, when you made the decision tonight to ask for $1.6 million? You didn't.
I haven't asked for anything yet.
Prior. No, but when you entertained it, you just, that was tonight, is the first time you thought of that.
I knew 600,000 was not gonna be enough.
Okay.
But I wanted to hear it on record from the administration what the actual number was going to be. But I think we all know that 600,000 minimum was not going to be enough to redo that building and this building. And if you think 600,000 is enough to do a year is enough to do both buildings at the same time, send me the name of your contractor, because I got some home repairs to do.
600,000 is not enough to do that. But
So when we get the actual.
1.7, 1.8, 1.3, 1.6 is what you want to change on. And it's just, I just,
Now that we have the information from the mayor and finance director, yes.
all right, take a vote.
Mayor?
Just to be clear, the goal is to minimize any spending on the city side, right? Whether that's enterprise fund, general fund, or what have you. And there's so many things so many variables that we can't lock down today. Interest rates, construction cost, all those things that won't be locked down for a long time. The 1.6, that could change based on the things I've mentioned, the scaling back the project, things of that nature. I wanted to have a ceiling, right? So it's not unusual to have debt service out of enterprise funds or general fund. The goal is not to increase cost on the taxpayers or anything, but we do pay off some long-term debt in some of those funds. This is all kind of very, very fluid, but we wanted to start somewhere. So I appreciate the conversation and everything. I just want to make sure that everyone realizes that we wanted to start somewhere. We want to keep this going. We don't want this to be stalled at one number. We want some flexibility. If passed as is, it doesn't mean we're going to go in tomorrow and say, hey, let's start at 600,000. But we want some flexibility in the negotiation process, right? It's something that we're all comfortable with. So whether that's our side, their side, that we're all comfortable with as we continue moving this forward. Like I said, there's a lot of things that we can't nail down as fact today. So that 1.6 could change. No one knows what the feds are going to do with the interest rate, right? They've been talking about cutting it for a while. They haven't. So let's say that gets cut. Let's say they increase it. So there's a lot of things of that nature. But I want to make sure that everyone's understanding that if it's passed as is, that doesn't mean we're going to go in and start negotiating at 600,000. We're going to start negotiating at what we all feel comfortable with, right? Knowing that number could change. It doesn't mean that we're going to stop searching for grant money either. So just because we've been told no before doesn't mean we're going to stop asking. So I appreciate everyone's comments and conversation, but I just wanted to kind of point that out.
Are there any other comments? Counselor?
Like I said, I think we should go start with 900,000 at least as just the opening bid to talk with the foundation. But as council members and also as directors, I think we should all reach out to the foundation one by one and go sit down with them and tell them, listen, you guys need to step up finally. I mean, they've stepped up a lot, but this is the time we finally get this building done. They need to step up with the money. And if you guys reach out to them, they might see it differently. As council members, we do care about it and we want it 100% this time. So it's way overdue. I think the foundation finally needs to step up with this and see what needs to be done.
Thank you. So you had your hand up?
Yeah.
This is a huge but extremely necessary undertaking. And we've had, you know, the minimum is 600,000, the maximum of 1.6 million. You know, isn't it possible for council as a whole with the mayor to schedule a meeting with the foundation and take the numbers, take the plans, and say, this is what we need to do. This is what it is going to cost. We need your help. And show them, have the numbers and the papers in front of them so they can see, instead of just going in with a grant application, you know, and say, oh, we need 600,000 or oh, we need 1.6 million. Bring them into this, that we need your help. We need you and the council and the city to be in this together to get this project done. Because this building needs renovations. We've talked about the courthouses, the judges going up the elevators with criminals, and you know, all of the city departments being in one building, in one central location. You know, and that's great, but what does the foundation know about all of that? What have they been talked to about all of that?
Mr. Mayor?
I can answer that. So they have been a part of discussions. We've given tours of the facility. Myself and the president of council both sit on the board per their regulations. You know, and we had a retreat this last Friday, talked about their spending policy and the rolling 20-quarter average and all the rules and regulations. So they're well aware of what's going on. But they can't make a decision unless, as the law director said, unless there's a formal ask. So they're well aware. We've played with the numbers, we've gone back and forth, but there needs to be a formal ask before they can really take a vote.
Are there any other comments? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to amend this to strike out minimum of 600,000 and replace with 1.6 million.
I'll make that motion.
I'll
Thank you.
second that.
You're not on the committee.
Oh, shit. That's on the second. I'm for it.
Sneaking through.
That's it. I tried.
I will second it. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Amendment passes 2-1. Do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. I will second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Passes 2-1. That's all on the agenda. Is there any miscellaneous discussion?
Chair, I do have a question. For clarification, can you reread the revised language for the ordinance?
It's amended to say, a resolution of the Council of the City of Barberton supports and authorizes the mayor to apply to the Barberton Community Foundation for a grant in the amount of $1.6 million annually for 25 years and declaring an emergency, which should not be on there. There was no emergency language attached to the
Just for
request.
clarification, that's a binary answer, yes or no, from the foundation, correct? It's either 1.6 or nothing.
Yes, it's replaced
Okay.
minimum of 600,000 with 1.6 million.
He did not say minimum.
He didn't say
You want
minimum.
me to amend the language
It-
to say
he-
minimum?
I said strike out minimum of 600,000.
No, he's asking for 1 point, that's what I wanted.
Okay.
So he's asking for flat 1.6, correct, Chair?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there any miscellaneous discussion?
Chair. I knew this is not miscellaneous, just real quick, these annual payments for the building and 1.6, do note this is a Promise Me grant. That doesn't mean that they have to give us this annually too as well, correct?
As the mayor stated, that
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm all for them getting 1.6, but, or asking for 1.6, but I'd hate to lock ourselves into that 1.6. It's a no or yes or no, and at this point, if they say no, there's no room for the mayor to negotiate. He has to ask for 1.6, that's it.
if they say no, then we're free and clear to ask again for a different amount.
going through this entire process again.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure that was clear. Thank you, Chair.
Yep. Do I have- Were there any other comments? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 7:41.
All right, that concludes our individual committee meetings. We're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 7:51 and start the committee of the whole.
Why?
All right, we're going to begin here shortly. Please ensure your cell phones are off or on silent.
God, I said it, do not disturb. It still says do not disturb. It shouldn't have done that.
It's an important call. You know, if they call you twice on iPhones, it will go through.
It'll go through, yeah.
If it's emergency, so it'll go through. But yeah, it's must have been an emergency, which I'm okay with. All right, we live. Okay. All right, well, welcome back after this long session here. Today is Monday, October 2nd, 2023. This is Committee of the Whole meeting for Barberton City Council. I call this meeting to order at 7:53 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we're going to jump right into citizens addressing council. We do have one, Mr. Jeanette. If you want to walk up to the podium, you have 5 minutes. Just state your name, address, and reason for speaking.
Thank you, President Greer. Name is Bob Jeanette, 445 31st Street, Southwest Barberton, Ohio. Just real briefly though, Mrs. Vangeloff, Paul Swanson started that Robinson Avenue viaduct, and that was like 4 engineers before it actually got completed.
Yeah.
So you are right, it does take a lot of time. I was here earlier in the summer and I made a couple suggestions. I just wanted to know if any council members, you don't have to answer me, if you don't want to, actually looked into it. Different specs for repairing our water lines on the compaction, because obviously it is, you know, they sink after a while. We had a multi-year project on 31st Street, had a water repair line that took place and on in front of Vassal's apartments, and now it's the biggest dip that you want to avoid because it continues to sink. If you don't compact it as you come up, it doesn't matter what you're doing because you're just compacting the top 6 to 8 inches. And then also, if you met with the law director to see if you can run an ad at the beginning of the year on properties that you mowed the previous year, if that could be the notification that is required by law. Because I know other communities have done that. It's ironic because it was like 2 days after I was here last time, all of a sudden the little stakes went out, the little placards on them, which is so archaic. Anyhow, I delivered low-hanging fruit to you when I was here a few months ago. And today still nothing has happened. Mrs. Fry, you'll know, on the corner of Union Street and 31st, we had vehicles sitting there. The camper, I don't know because I didn't have the courage enough to go back in the camper to see if it is even licensed. But I'll tell you right now, that car that's been sitting there, unoperable, license expired in 2020, my bad. It was 4 years ago. This is the entrance to the city of Barberton coming in from the south on Cleveland Master Road. Welcome to Barberton. Well, then on the right, you have 2 vehicles, and yes, it is in Norton. And also you have a roof that has collapsed at the old Action Auto right next to Cheers. Again, that's in Norton, but do we not have relationships with people in Norton to be able to fix that? Is that what we wanted people to look at when they come to the Magic City? And then speaking of that area, we got the island, which has been, you know, I talked about the broken window theory. I don't know if anybody looked that up when I was here last time. You know, if nothing is done, everybody, it appears that it is going to be acceptable. Well, you know, that island is actually, if you really look closely, and I'm going to pass these around, I know they'll be thrown away and probably nothing will be done. But if you look closely, inside that island amongst the weeds is like signs that are down there that are yard sale signs. Action Auto, they've been out of business probably for a good 15 years, you know, and that sign, we have sign ordinances that will deal with that. This right here, our finance director was talking about enterprise funds. This is city property. This here is city property that we cut it after it gets too high, that we would notify residents if we're gonna cut their property. So it's all clump. Enterprise funds, this should be so well manicured because this is the pump station up there on 31st Street. Enterprise funds pays for this. You know, so that should be well manicured. If you look around the trees, you know, you got the roots coming up. And I was actually over there today, and these pictures probably took me less than 10 minutes to take. And the majority of them are in the 6th Ward. Again, you know, we cut it, we don't trim, you know, so of course here we got grass that is high over there as well. Brightenstein Park, you know, this is what the parks look like. You know, and I will tell you though, since I took these pictures, it got cut last week. But guess where all the weeds and the grass that was cut ended up? In the pond. Which, Mayor, you're high on that, getting that stuff out of the waterways. This right here, just a couple pictures. One on the right, you see is nice family, cute little girls waiting for the parade. You know what I see? I see my grandkids sitting in 8 inches of grass waiting for the parade. You know, up in Stowe with the 4th of July parade, nothing gets done that week before the parade because it is all hands on deck cleaning that parade route because you're bringing in people from all over the community. And this right here, this was on the corner of Hudson Run and Worcester Road. That's what people got to look at when they came in for the parade. It's an embarrassment. This here, Worcester Road West. You know, there used to be a gas station there. We tore that down. You know, that was tore down. But now you got a truck up there with 3 wheels, 3 tires. Is that acceptable? I mean, that's the main entrance. The one on the bottom right, you know, that's Johnson's Corners. You know, we got ordinances on the books that your dumpsters have to be buffered. Now, this is just an example because they're all over the city. But if nobody does anything, then again, it goes back to the broken window theory. This one right here, mattress on Worcester Road West. I sat there for 2 weeks. It's gone now. Okay, but I took it. And then the other one is across from Silva's Funeral Home. There's a Magic City drive-through. That sign is the pole is there, the frame is there. But we worked very hard, and I think you were working for Mayor Hart at that time. We worked very hard on the sign ordinances because we had sign companies in to see what was acceptable. And I believe it was 30 days after either a business goes out or the sign is in repair that it has to be replaced. Many of you know that I have apartments, okay, and I'm not shy about that either because actually I was a landlord when I was mayor when I implemented that rental registration program because I think it was good for the city. It's a way to generate revenue to put in the building department. And the landlords aren't the problem. You may have some, but I tell you, for every landlord is a problem. There's probably about 5 owner-occupied residents that are more of a problem. So over here on the right-hand side, it's probably the nicest house on 29th Street Northwest. And I went over and talked to him the other day because I want to make sure they have my cell number because I can't be there 24/7. If there's an issue, I want him to notify me because I want to be a good neighbor, you know. And I was in a conversation, I was telling him, I said, you know what, the city should never have allowed my dad to rezone these, you know, from single family to multifamily. He said, why is that? I go, because you put multifamily right in the middle of a neighborhood. He goes, look around. He said, you're an asset to the neighborhood. That's pretty scary when you're going, you know, the apartments are an asset. But I got pictures here. This is what I'm dealing with. Next to my apartments. And these are owner occupied. It's pathetic that I got to deal with this, or the city, you know, and I know you guys are probably waiting for me to leave, but you guys need to be concerned when people like myself don't come down here, you know. Again, this is right next to my apartments on 29th Street. I can live in every one of my apartments because that's how I treat them. And then going back to the signs, you know, we all drive by it. You know, we don't think about it, but there are ordinances that deal with that, and we got to start cleaning the city up little at a time. You know, here's one, and we can dump all the money, the foundation or downtown the Barberton area, we dump all the money in there. But until that mindset is changed, nothing will change. How long has Dave Shute been gone? How long has the Varsity Teen Center been gone? Yeah, it's downtown Barberton. I mean, you got a big frame up there. You know, that I believe, I the planning director, I don't know, I believe it is 30 days on the sign. But then if you look real close, you see something else on this one. And then there may not be an ordinance dealing with this. But you know what, if there's not, then we need to deal with it. Telephone, how many pay phones? They're gone today. But you know what? The poles are there, the phone booth, the phone modules are there. They need to get rid of it. And you know, and you're the policymakers. The mayor, they implement. But you guys need to set the policy. I remember there was, for probably 10 years, there was a garage door that was broke, hanging over there on the corner of Shannon and Hillsdale. And the building commissioner said there's no ordinances that it's got to be operable, it's just ordinances you got to have. So we, as silly as it sounds, we had to pass an ordinance that the garage doors had to be operable. And then once we did that, then it was fixed. But but again, you look at this, the phone booth, or the old pay phones. Just little small stuff like that. But it won't take a lot. But I tell you, the property maintenance has to come to fruition. We need to do better at it. It's sad. And this is all, 95% of these pictures were taken in 10 minutes in the 6th floor. And I'm not faulting you in particular because I think we all got blood on our hands. Every city worker,
I would like to address a couple of the ones that you brought up.
Sure.
Hold
on a second.
Not here.
I got a couple more minutes.
Yeah, not here. And
Okay.
you're running up on 10 minutes, Mr. Jeanette.
Real
You had
quick,
5.
talked about a roundabout. Nobody likes them. Possibly, 31st Street, Haynes, and Cleveland Master Road. The land acquisition would be nil because that right of way actually goes about 20 feet east off of the curb. Plus, you got the city property and this and that. But regardless, it needs to be addressed, that whole area. And Mayor, you said recently about bringing living wage jobs in here, and I fully agree with that. However, and it'd be great if every resident earned a living wage that lived in Barberton. But you got to take your rose-colored glasses off. We can't control that. You can entice, you can help bring businesses in, but how many employees at BWXT who make a living wage actually live in Barberton? How many city employees that make a living wage actually live in Barberton? And there's a couple of reasons for that, for choices, but I'm going to tell you probably the number one reason is neighborhoods. We don't have enough nice neighborhoods for these people that can afford to move out in the suburbs to live in. But you can control property maintenance. You can't control where people live. You can't control what employers pay their employees, but you can control the property maintenance. And it's that bus that says what is it? Barberton forward, neighborhoods first. It's Barberton backward, neighborhoods last. Because in a time this has happened exponentially, and until we get a program in place to address it, our city's going to deteriorate. And I tell you, it's just, it is sad. Because the people that make a living wage that live in Barberton, I assure you, the majority of them or their spouse grew up in Barberton. We're not bringing people in from out of town. I'm done now.
Thank you, Mr. Jeanette.
We'll talk after.
But that's all I have. But yeah, I would like that.
We'll jump into the committee reports. We'll start with street, sidewalk, and lighting with Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. Street, sidewalk, and lighting met this evening at 6 p.m. All members of the committee were present. Council members present except for Mrs. Colburn, and guests as noted on my sheet. I had 2 pieces of legislation. The first one is a letter from Michael Tiadecki requesting legislation permitting the mayor to apply to Akron Metropolitan Area Transportation Study, AMETS, for a congestion mitigation air quality program, CMAQ grant 2023 infrastructure project funding. We had a little bit of discussion on that, and a motion was passed to call on this. The second piece of legislation was referred to the Streets Department from the Utilities, a letter from Todd Shreve, Service Director, requesting legislation to enter into contract with Simonson Construction Services, LLC, to replace water mains on Taylor Road for a bid cost of $1,181,081 and a 65.9%, $797,000 was awarded from OPWC. Emergency wording was requested, and this too came out of the committee. We had no pending legislation, and I discussed the bid processing, and with that, I adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Angela. Next up, planning, annexation, and codes with Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning, Annexation, and Codes Committee met this evening at 6:17 in council chambers. All members of the committee were present, as well as all council members, with the exception of Mrs. Coburn, who is absent. All other guests are noted on my agenda sheet. The committee is calling for one piece of legislation, a letter from Benya Fulton, Assistant Planning Director, requesting legislation to allow the city to enter into a contract with Butcher and Sons for the demolition of 401 Newell Street. Emergency wording and one reading requested. There was no miscellaneous discussion, and we adjourned at 6:19. With that, I will pass.
Next up is the utilities with Mrs. Coburn. Mrs. Coburn is absent. I apologize. Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities met last Monday, September the 25th, at around 6:10. The chairman, Joyce Coburn, was absent, so I chaired the committee, and the committee was only made up of myself and Mrs. Bailey. All other council members were present, as well as guests as noted on my sheet. We had two pieces of legislation that were requested. The first was a letter from Todd Shreve, Service Director, requesting legislation to enter into contract with Simonson Construction Services LLC to replace water mains on Taylor Road for a total bid cost of $1,181,081. And this makes up 65.9% of the total project. Emergency wording, well, we had been awarded a grant from OPWC. Emergency wording was requested, and it was referred to streets, which Mrs. Angeloff just indicated. The second was a letter from Dennis Weaver, Utilities Director, requesting legislation authorizing the final change order for United Earthworks for the Brentwood Estates Sanitary Sewer and Package Plant Elimination Phase 3 in the amount of $184,631.95. Emergency wording was requested. There were no comments or discussion on either of those pieces of legislation. We also had a piece of pending legislation, which was enter into contract with Kavanaugh Construction to fix the water main on Hoppigan. We voted on that last week. There was no miscellaneous discussion, and with that, I will pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Fry. Next up is Public Welfare and Safety with Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Welfare and Safety met last week, Monday, September the 25th. Brought the meeting to order at 6:03. All members, well, not all members of the committee. I was present as chair, and Mr. Griffin was one of the members of the committee. Mrs. Coburn was absent. All other council members were present, as well as guests that were noted on my sheet. We had no requests for legislation. We did vote on one piece of legislation, which was to authorize payment for Fire Safety Services Incorporated, and it was for the mask fitting equipment for the fire department. We adjourned at 6:04, and with that, I will pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Fry. Rules, Marketing, and Development. Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules, Marketing, and Development met on September 25th. We met in council chambers. All members were present and guests noted. We had no new legislation. We adjourned at 6:05. With that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Environmental Health and Social Services. Mrs. Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Environmental Health and Social Services Committee met tonight, October 2nd at 6:16 p.m. in council chambers. All members were present. The only council member that was absent was Ms. Coburn, and all others noted on my sheet. There were no new topics of requested legislation or pending legislation. Also, no miscellaneous discussion. We adjourned at 6:16 p.m. And with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Bailey. City Properties, Parks, and Recreation. Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties met September 25th, 6:02, located in council chambers. All members are present, including Mrs. Fry, Mr. Heidick, and myself. And we had no request legislation, and pending legislation we had was release of deed restrictions of 666 Norton Avenue, former Armour property. And no miscellaneous discussion, and that I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Jaber.
Thanks, sir.
Finance and Personnel. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and Personnel had a letter from Mayor Judge to request legislation that was amended. The original was A resolution of the Council of the City of Barberton supports and authorizes the mayor to apply to the Barberton Community Foundation for a grant in the amount of minimum $600,000 annually for 25 years, was amended to a resolution of the Council of the City of Barberton supports and authorizes the mayor to apply to the Barberton Community Foundation for a grant in the amount of $1,600,000 annually for 25 years. With that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. Just make sure that double checking that language gets to the clerk so we can make sure that's right. Thank you.
President, was that a minimum? A minimum of?
No discussion, yeah.
1.6 altogether.
Okay, we'll have a updated draft for that. Is there any remarks from council members? All right. Anything from department heads? Next week is Columbus Day. We do have council. And with nothing else, mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I'd like to address Mr. Jeanette's comments. I'm a believer in the broken window theory as well. We had 2 employees leave recently from the building department for more money. Another employee left to take another job within the city for more money. We have 2 new employees starting soon. They're going through the process, and we're prepared to hire additional employees. But we have to go through the proper legal and civil service process. With all due respect to all the pictures that were shown tonight, I could show you 5 times the amount of pictures of properties cleaned up, properties that we've helped the residents, properties that, commercial and residential, that are in the right state of mind versus where they were. So taking a few pictures of the 6th Ward, you're going to find bad homes in Greene and Wadsworth and Akron and Norton and everywhere else. So, let's be realistic when we look at pictures and look at both sides. My administration's removed more dilapidated and condemned homes than any other administration, and these are properties that were stealing value from you guys, the residents in town. Remember, when I first got in office, we took over and condemned and tore down over 250 housing units. We have had a hand in assisting the redevelopment, including new single-family homes, and assisted in the renovation of homes throughout the city of Barberton more than any other administration. Think about where Highland School is. That was just a vacant lot. We got new single-family homes. We do have new residents moving into town. We do have businesses that want to hire Barberton people and have available positions. That's why we started doing business tours with high school students. That's why we started working with employment agencies. That's why we started working with our new resident welcome packet. When new residents come in, we steer them in the direction of new employees. I asked Mayor Jeanette to meet with me. He declined, and he just left the meeting, the proceedings tonight. So I want that in the record. My door is open. Anyone wants to come in at any time, as long as I'm not in the meeting, my door is open. I'll meet with anyone anytime. It's easy to sit. It's easy to come in and complain and jump up and down and then walk out. If someone wants to talk, someone wants to sit down and see what the plan is, my door is open anytime. Any questions on that? No? Okay. All right. I want to thank everyone who came out for Change for Change. Collected over $680 for victim assistance, which helps Barberton residents. So thank you to Barberton Leader Toffel for hosting the Change for Change. Next one will be at El Tule on October 20th, benefiting Down Syndrome Association. I do appreciate the feedback and patience of the residents with all the infrastructure projects going on throughout town. We do ask that you be wary of any lane changes and proceed with caution. I know there's a lot of barrels up and signage. It's up for a reason. So lanes do change, construction zones do change. Just go very slow and you'll be fine. We did start working last week on the drainage issue at Annexation Park. This should be wrapped up soon. We're continuing the rest of the renovations at Annexation, including the walking path, here soon. So we're still working on that. Other projects are continuing as well as we enter the fall months. So if you have any questions on those, please let me know. I'm talking to Mr. Best here. Depending on what almanac you look at, it's going to be a very horrible winter or a very mild winter. That affects us in a lot of different ways. It affects our construction projects. They're going to start buttoning up. We're waiting for the spring, or are we going to try to work through the fall months and into the winter? I think it snowed 3 days last year, so it was very, very mild. So they were able to get a lot of stuff done. So just be cognizant of that as we move forward. Are there any questions for me on anything? All right, again, my door is open. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. With nothing else, this meeting is adjourned at 8:18 PM. Thanks, everybody.